2 million face masks, protective clothing and disinfectant, confiscated by the Spanish police. All these goods were stolen. Their market value, around 5 million euros. The fraudsters intended to repackage everything in the storage space in Santiago de Compostela to hide the item's origin. Europol, the European police authority, has had its hands full for weeks.
We see three big developments. The first one is counterfeiting goods. That is really the booming sector. Secondly, we see a real shift in cybercrime. And thirdly, the abuse of vulnerable groups. That are the three big areas we detected until now that are of special interest for organized crime groups.
Counterfeit face masks like these, confiscated by Italian police, are being sold online at exaggerated prices. But they were not produced to medical standards in a sterile environment. Europol has already taken down more than 2,500 websites and online shops, detaining more than 120 people behind them. Criminal enterprises have become highly creative in the pandemic.
What we see, organized crime group, they use the opportunity because they use the fear of the people, and they use the fact that people need answers to their questions and that they want to protect themselves.
But it's not just criminals taking advantage of people's fear. The NRA, the American gun lobby, has launched an online campaign encouraging people to arm themselves.
I am one of the millions of Americans who is vulnerable to the deadly coronavirus. I hope I survive the coronavirus. That's up to God. What's in my control is how I defend myself if things go from bad to worse. You might be wondering why I'm holding this.
In March, Americans bought 2.5 million weapons. That's 85% more than a year ago. But the fear of increased criminal activity during this crisis is not matched by actual figures. According to police in most major cities worldwide, even New York or Los Angeles, there's been a dramatic drop in the number of crimes, including murder and break-ins. But on the Italian island of Sicily and in other countries, criminals are taking advantage of people's financial strain and other difficulties. They set out to plunder supermarkets, which is why police have been stationed to protect them. The mayor of Naples has warned that wherever citizens are unable to pay their bills because of the lockdown, the mafia is mercilessly stepping in to take advantage of the situation.
I'm now joined by Lucia Bird. She's senior analyst at the Global Initiative Against Transnational Organized Crime. She's based in London. Hello, Lucia. How are coronavirus lockdowns impacting organized crime?
Well, for some criminal groups, COVID presents an opportunity. For others, an operational challenge. Criminal groups are extremely flexible and they move towards where the greatest profits are. And as we've heard, medical masks are one of these areas. And for example, we've seen a number of darknet accounts originating in China that traditionally sold synthetic drugs, now advertising masks. As the chemicals required to manufacture the illicit drugs have become more expensive due to COVID supply chain restrictions, masks have become newly profitable. But for some groups, they've seen their traditional revenues dry up. For example, for many gangs in Central America, extortion is a key source of revenue, where they take a percentage of the profits of businesses in exchange for protection. However, with COVID restrictions, non-essential businesses have shut and gang members cannot go to collect the extortion payments. So law enforcement have tracked a shift into other activities to plug this revenue gap, like drugs trafficking, or they're predicting a move into cybercrime.
Yeah, and speaking of cybercrime, Lucia, the EU's law enforcement agency, Europol, says that there's been a spike in cybercrime. Why would that be happening?
There are a number of reasons. COVID and the public fear that it has created offers an opportunity for cyber criminals, including in the form of phishing scams, which we've seen a huge surge of. Now, we've seen this happen with other public health emergencies like Ebola or SARS, but COVID is unprecedentedly global. Further, much of cybercrime requires relatively limited tech skills. You can buy a phishing kit online for as little as $50. So it is feasible for some criminal actors who see their usual activities become more difficult to move into cybercrime.
Lucia, very quickly, how about what's going on in terms of human trafficking?
So with human trafficking, the vulnerability of many is set to increase, and therefore their exploitation by criminal groups. With human smuggling, which is slightly different and is more to do with irregular migration, we've seen a temporary decrease in activity due to movement restrictions, but also fear of contagion amongst smugglers and migrants. We've seen some changes in routes. So, for example, in Morocco, land routes have almost completely stopped, but maritime routes, almost certainly smuggler facilitated, continue. And we may see some that were moving by land shift to sea. Further, we'll see lots of migrants stuck in transit, and then they run out of funds because this wasn't planned for in budgets and become highly vulnerable to exploitation by criminal groups. Finally, although we may see this temporary lull, the drivers for movement have not disappeared. In fact, post-COVID and the many livelihoods disappeared, they may well have increased. So we're expecting a surge in movement, much of it irregular, given that legal pathways are shrinking, much of it smuggler facilitated. And this means a swelling of smuggler profits.
Lucia Bird in London, thank you.
Thank you.